Amazing. So a very, very warm welcome to everyone joining us for this afternoon's webinar, in which we're launching some new tools that are now freely available from the website. They're all designed to support schools in evaluating their EAL provision, and I will share the link to those in just a moment. So in the last few years, as school cohorts have changed, we've seen a significant increase in the number of schools inquiring about how to audit their EAL provision. We know that this time of year sees schools planning for the next academic year, so we hope that this webinar will give you some ideas to take away and to share with others, and perhaps build on from September. As you can see, so if everybody would like to turn their cameras on, if you can see, I'm joined by 4 speakers. First, we've got Karen Warwick and Sheila Hopkins. Karen Warwick joined the Bell Foundation in 2020 as a trainer, and before that she worked as an EAL specialist teacher for local authorities as well as independently. Before that, Karen was a primary classroom teacher. She has an MA in education and a CELTA qualification. Her work with the foundation includes running training, developing teaching resources and working closely with our scaling partners. Sheila Hopkins has been with the Bell Foundation also since 2020. She holds an MA in TESOL plus qualifications in primary education and EAL teaching. She's worked as an EAL specialist in schools, as an EAL tutor in initial teacher training programs and TESOL courses at university level in the States. Her EAL work with the foundation focuses on initial teacher education, early careers teachers, senior leaders, and working with our scaling partners. And next, we have Karen Thomas and Kerry James. We're very grateful that they've given up their time at such a busy point in the academic year to share their experience of evaluating whole school provision. First, Karen Thomas. Karen is the manager of Portsmouth's Ethnic Minority Achievement Service, so we're in very safe hands. Previously a teacher, Karen now advises schools regarding their provision for children using EAL, including recognising and celebrating multilingualism. And Kerry James. Kerry is the head teacher of Christchurch C.V. Primary School, having taken up the role in September 2023. Sorry, it's in Western-super-Mare. His leadership at Christchurch CV Primary is part of the school's ongoing commitment to nurturing a supportive and inclusive learning environment guided by the school's ethos of let your light shine. Under his leadership, the school continues to thrive as part of the Kaleidoscope Multi-Academy Trust, serving a diverse student body. And I had the privilege of visiting Christchurch as part of a whole school evaluation visit some time ago. So I'm really delighted that Kerry's able to join us today and share a little bit of that journey with everybody. Not just the process, but also some of the actions that he's taken as a result of the visit. So it was a really wonderful visit. So I'm absolutely delighted that you can be here, Kerry. So a brief overview of what's included in today's webinar. First, Karen will give a little background to the development of the materials and their importance. Sheila will go on to introduce the material themselves. Karen Thomas will share some of her expertise around supporting schools with evaluating their whole school provision. And finally, Kerry will speak about his school's journey in terms of raising the profile of EAL and really celebrating multilingualism. We hope there will be time for questions at the end. So as I mentioned before, please use the Q&A function to share any questions that you've got for any of the 4 speakers. And with that, I'll hand over to Karen.
Thanks, Caroline. Hello, everybody, and a warm welcome to you. So I'm going to start with a quote from a young multilingual learner from a book, Refugee Education, Theorise in Practice in Schools by Joanna McIntyre and Fran Abrahams. The references there on the slide. But I just thought this quote would set the scene a little bit around what schools are experiencing and the fact that provision has been considered for this young learner, which is evident in the first statement about adapting to the school system, really sets that scene to why self-assessment is really important for EAL provision. So I'll give you just a second to absorb that quote. And as much need, the provision should aim to be the best it can be for new arrivals and learners from established communities present in our schools to thrive, to really reach their full potential and feel a sense of belonging. So I hope by the end of this webinar, you'll feel that this is a tool that you can visit to achieve that. So let's first consider what it is, who is it for, and why it's important. So what is it? Well, it's a reflective, developmental, and a collaborative approach to a toolkit that provides guidance for school. And I really want to emphasize that reflective and developmental and collaborative approach with that EAL lens. With the attention and the outcomes, allowing schools to identify their strengths in EAL provision, what a school is doing well, what they already have in place, and these can be both pastoral strengths and academic strengths. To champion very much and showcase their EAL provision, as I hope we'll hear a bit later on in the presentation, and identify what targets there are and where actions need to improve provision. Just to say, which Sheila is going to pick up on a little bit more, well, very much more in the next section, that it considers 8 dimensions of EAL provision, with questions and criteria to guide and support you through the process. And as I said, Sheila is talking much more about that. So the guidance really recognises that schools have different levels of expertise and experience with EAL. Therefore, the documents are designed to support schools regardless of their expertise. So who is it for? Well, it's for school leaders, definitely, and EAL coordinators, definitely, but ultimately it is really for the whole school to take part in this process. It's very much for schools who have begun their journey and want to reflect and ensure that previous recommendations and actions have been addressed. And it's also for schools who have never conducted a self-evaluation in the past and would like to do so and have recognised that need and the importance of doing it. So wherever a school is in their EAL self-evaluation, self-assessment evaluation journey, the key message again is that it's a whole school collaboration, enabling schools to not only raise and develop the profile of EAL provision in their school. So why do we need to do it? Well, a main reason, and Caroline has already drawn on this in her introduction, is that we have a change in population, and the context of UK schools has considerably changed over the past year. So here's a young learner telling us that there are 9,032,426 learners in England alone. And has identified that there are 1,806,2,900 of these learners use English as an additional language in our schools in England at the moment, which is roughly and definitely more than 1 in 5 learners in a classroom, as this next slide shows us in a little bit more detail. And what's interesting here is that this is the January 2025 census, sorry, so this is new data. What you can see is that the nursery percentage is considerably higher than everywhere else and grown from last year. And this is going to have a real knock-on effect as we, go through school systems, and of course will affect secondary schools much later on down the line. So it'll be interesting to see how this data grows as the years go on. It hasn't gone down yet. So that's one very good reason. And that's where you can get all that data from. and the change of and our diversity in our schools sort of really includes different ethnic backgrounds. Children are speaking different languages, and they read and write different language scripts. They have different levels of proficiency in both their first language, and English, and their cultural backgrounds are very different. Schools are experiencing, particularly secondary schools, more late arrivals coming into the school system. In year 9, very challenging. And they are very, and everyone has very different individual circumstances and different reasons for migration. So we have children or families who are refugees and asylum seekers. We have multilingual learners who may have SEND and EAL. So really completing a whole school self-assessment can really establish, establish and help make sure that provision is very much in place to address all these different needs, all this super diversity that we have in our schools at the moment. And what is really clear is that one size really does not fit all. Therefore, the need to ensure that schools engage with this and have a clear vision and a practical plan for their development of EAL provision could not be more important to ensure that the needs of multilingual learners are really identified and acted on. And from ensuring that our schools are welcoming and inclusive spaces, from reception, from the reception and foyer to the teaching and learning in the classroom and engaging with families. So to quickly recap before I hand over to Sheila, so over the past years, we've seen that steady increase in the numbers of multilingual learners, which has subsequently led to an increase in the number of schools interested in evaluating their EAL provision and have been looking to us for the tools, which has given us the opportunity to review what we had on the website and update it. And I shall now very much hand over to Sheila to explain how all that has been updated, and talk you through the new documents. Thank you, Sheila.
You're welcome. Thank you, Karen. Yes, happy to be here today and to introduce our updated materials. Just to let you know, all of the materials within the self-evaluation toolkit are available freely on our website. And as Caroline said initially, these will be available to you. We'll send the link to you all tomorrow. As part of what you will find on the website, we will have the actual self-evaluation tool, along with a recommended actions template as part of the evaluation, which you can use ours or whatever you currently use in your own school. All of the materials are very flexible to suit your own particular contexts. We provide guidance for conducting the process, as well as some recommended resources at the end for you to support you in any of areas that you might feel you want to improve upon or start to develop itself. Okay, thanks, Karen. So next, there are 8 dimensions to EAL provision that we have identified and have included in the evaluation process. If you use some of our older materials, we didn't have all 8, but we do have 8 of these now. It is up to you whether you want to do a whole school evaluation on all 8 of those areas, which would give you a good overview of where you are at, or perhaps you already know that you really need to focus on 2 or 3 of those and you just want to zero in on those dimensions themselves. So again, up to you. But I'll read out the 8 different dimensions here. Our first one is inclusive vision, values, attitudes, and behaviors around multilingualism and EAL. Secondly, we have you look at inclusive governance and leadership for EAL. And third, we have you look at whether you have like an EAL policy or a language policy in your school. We have you look at any continued professional learning that you have done. And then moving down to the second row, we are starting to look at assessment and placement of multilingual pupils, and of course, curriculum, teaching, and support in schools. And then we do have you look at learning and achievement of multilingual pupils, maybe some attainment data that you can look at. And finally, involvement of multilingual pupils, parents, and carers. So it's a range of whole school evaluation process. Okay, thanks, Karen. There are 3 stages to the process, as you see here, and each of these are clearly identified within the guidance and provide you details of instructions for how to carry these out. You will see there's preparing, during, and after the evaluation. Okay, and I will go for each of these in turn. Preparing the evaluation, our key message here really is that this is a team effort. And this is something that should not fall on the shoulders of just one person. As Karen mentioned earlier, this is really a whole school process. So you, in preparing for this, want to identify that group. Hopefully there will be people on there that have responsibility and expertise with EAL, but also a range of roles that can add the input into the evaluation process. We also will provide you with some suggested activities that you can include in the evaluation day, or you might, have a couple days to do the evaluation. But these could be things like doing some observations in classrooms, or having some focus groups with teachers or students or TAs, maybe do a school walk around to gather some data in that regard. And we also do some or provide some suggested documents for you to collect prior to the actual evaluation day, so that you can review some of these, like the a language or your EAL policy, achievement data that you might have for your learners using EAL, or if you have any induction programs or processes for welcoming new arrivals who might be new to English as well. So that's preparing for it. And then as we move on to the second stage, you will be, this is during the evaluation, and during that time, you will be rating each of those dimensions, or the 2 or 3, or how many dimensions you are looking at. You will be rating them on a scale of 1 to 5. And this kind of shows you what we mean by developmental, because this is something that you just determine. I'll read out what each of these mean. The first one is that this dimension or aspect is fully developed. 2 is that the dimension is partially developed, but you really are on your way with that one. 3 is the development of this aspect has just begun, but you are starting with that. 4 is that it has been identified. You know you want to do something in that area, but that hasn't been started yet. And 5 is actually that it is something that you haven't really identified yet. It's something that you are just learning about now. So this is the rating scale that supports you with the evaluation itself. Okay, Karen, there we go. So, and then to help you with determining those scores, this is where you will be using the evaluation tool, along with the activities and documents that you will be reviewing. But for each of those dimensions, we provide you with a list of questions that can help prompt you to consider various aspects of EAL provision in that particular area. For example, here you see inclusive governance and leadership of EAL provision. And we ask things like, is there a named governor who leads on EAL? Or is there a named member of the senior leadership team that has overall responsibility for EAL? Does the school have an EAL strategy or action plan? So these questions are to prompt you to consider your provision. And then you have space for comments and or evidence of that area. And then you will have your score. Now, these are editable documents, so long as you download them first, and then you can edit them as you go along. Under each of these dimensions, there's also a space for recommendations and notes that you will want to be thinking about as you go through the day, the evaluation day. Okay, Karen, you can go on. So then the final stage is after the evaluation, and here is where we provide a template just so that it can help you to think about and consider some recommended actions. You are wanting to think about at this point what it is that you are wanting to develop or implement, or what it is that you really excel at this point. And this is where you also probably want to think about prioritizing your actions of things that you are hoping to do. We typically recommend that this action period, it takes around 2 or 3 years. So it's because if you actually are going to do something quite, bigger project, say you are wanting to start to maybe evaluate for or assess for English language proficiency levels of learners, and you might need to have some continued professional development with that and a system for putting that in place. It takes time. So this is something where you really are able to think carefully and thoroughly about what actions you want to take. So and then Karen, we can move on to support you with this. We also include suggested resources. And this is something that you see here. The top section there is suggestions for training. If you are looking for professional development, we have regional trainings or on-demand, online, freely accessed training, webinars, that type of thing that you can access. And we have also provided you with links of specific guidance and resources that go along and organized by each one of those dimensions. So it's not an exhaustive list by any means, but it will give you some key documents or resources that would help as you consider how you would possibly want to develop in those areas that you find you are wanting to pursue that. So for example, it might link to our EAL and SEND guidance. We have recommendations for provision in schools for children who are refugees, classroom guidance and strategies to support EAL learners at different proficiency levels in English. And then I also included here just our assessment framework for assessing English language proficiency. So there's a lot of guidance documents on our website, and this will get you started, at least to kind of get you connected to some of these resources. And then finally, for those of you, maybe already you're feeling like you have some excellent EAL provision in your schools already, or after you do the self-evaluation and work on this for a little bit, you find that you are really doing some great work, which I'm sure all of you are doing even at this point, but you're wanting to have that somehow recognized or marked for you. And so we do include, or we do have within the Bell Foundation, an EAL accreditation scheme. And this is something that actually goes along with those exact same 8 dimensions. So if you have started with doing some self-evaluation, you're kind of on your way with knowing how you would do for this accreditation. But it provides you with a quality mark or certificate. It's done completely online, affordable, and with some of us at the Bell Foundation. So that information will also be linked in your email tomorrow. And then I just want to finish by just saying, if you are just beginning with thinking about EAL provision or just new to some of this, you may also want to have some support from someone who does have some expertise in EAL. And we do offer support through what we call our centers of expertise, which is regionally around the country. And we have licensed practitioners who might be able to support you in this or to help you with recommendations of where to go after you have done your evaluation. That information is in the guidance document that you will find on the website, so you can look at that as well. And speaking of someone that can support with this, it's a good way to turn it over to Karen Thomas, who has worked with a number of schools, quite a few schools, in helping them through their EAL provision, or evaluating their EAL provision. And so she's someone on the ground that has been doing this. And so I will turn it over to her at this point.
Fantastic. Thank you, Sheila.
Mhm.
And thank you for inviting me today to talk to you about our work. As Caroline said at the beginning, I'm Karen Thomas and I run the Ethnic Minority Achievement Service in Portsmouth. We're a team of advisors, support staff, and we've got 25 bilingual learning assistants who support in 22 community languages on the ground. So it's a really great team and I love my job. As an advisor, I work across almost all of the schools in Portsmouth, but also in schools in other areas and other counties nearby. And we do training, pupil assessments, and whole school strategic change, which is where, for me, the whole school evaluation suite of resources that Bella is sharing today has been really invaluable. I love it. I use it all the time. As I say, it's I've been using the older version, so you're getting the most up-to-date or hot off the press ones when you go into the links that Caroline's been putting into the chat there. So hopefully you'll see the how it goes across. I think it's really flexible, and it really depends on who in school I'm supporting. And this is, Sheila just said it's a team effort, and absolutely is really a team effort. It doesn't always work like that, and in reality, I have to say it's sometimes very different. So I use it differently with different people. So hopefully this might chime with you in the different ways that I've used it in the past in your current situation now. So Karen, if you would put the first bullet point up there. Thank you. So often I'm asked to work with the school's EMA coordinator. In Portsmouth, every school has one of these, and we work with them, but they might be a teaching assistant, an HLTA, an early career teacher, maybe just starting out and not really sure about leading a subject. And that is unfortunately the reality. EAL can be a bit of a Cinderella subject. It's not always given the recognition that it deserves. So I do work with people that maybe with the best will in the world don't have a lot of clout in school, haven't got that capacity of change. They're amazing. They're doing really great work operationally, but perhaps they haven't got any strategic overview or understanding of what's going on. In which case you still can use this, but I would use it in a very different way. And if that's you and you're thinking, yeah, I'm doing all the support operationally, but I'm not in senior leadership, I'm not that sort of person, then it can still be really useful. I've used it as a basis for discussion. So rather than feeling that you have to give one of those grades, you know, the 1 to 5 grades about where you are, it can be quite nerve-wracking if you're trying to sort of judge teachers and senior leadership and putting down on paper exactly what you think about what's going on. So in that situation, I've used it as a basis to focus the conversation. And I think it's a really good starting point. I would do what Sheila said as well and not look at everything, because if you don't have that whole overview of what's going on, it can be so daunting. So maybe you might focus on what you can influence. So maybe if you're in charge of looking at the new arrivals that come to your school and assessing them and putting an induction program in place, or looking at progress for them, or maybe teaching them, then if that's the case, focus on what you can influence and use it as a starting point and a conversation to go to your head or your departmental manager or however it works in your school. Now, I've got a bit of an extended metaphor here, so please bear with me. I would say in that first situation, it's a bit like a very large scale map. I don't know if any of you, especially those in the UK, if you ever watched Race Across the World, but I can see it being used in that way. It's got key points, key next steps, but what it doesn't give you is the whole destination. You don't know where you're going. So there will be other map references as we go along. So the second one is working with someone that does have that clout, that ability to change what's going on in a school. And this has been tricky occasionally. I've gone in all enthusiastic and with lots of ideas, working with people in school. Maybe they're really at the start of their journey as a school. They haven't thought about EAL very much in the past, or maybe they've just suddenly got a new cohort coming in. And that's it's a real change, and it's suddenly brought this into their attention. And in this respect, you know that you've got the need there and you want to look where you're going. And like I say, this might be your situation today, but you don't really know what you don't know. And it can be a little bit overwhelming. So I would really think about how you use it in that situation as well. I have worked with one school. It was quite sad. We wasn't sad in the end, let me just say, but who became really disillusioned, really apologetic. Oh my God, we're not doing anything. You know, oh, we should be doing this and we're not doing that. We're failing the children. They weren't, but it was, for them, it was so much. And it was, rather than, as Sheila said, it's thinking about it being a whole process for years and years and real change, taking everyone in with you. They were just a bit overwhelmed by it. So I think what you need to then think about, if that is your situation, that it's a marathon, not a sprint. That's really important. And if I go back to my map metaphor, apologies for this, I think it's like an ordnance survey map and a compass, or maybe Google Maps if you're in the 21st century. You get detailed directions. It's really turn at the end of the road, go left, go right, but you have to take one step at a time. And I think that's really important to know that you have got the destination, but you need to do it bit by bit. And I think seeing it like in that respect, I think that's a really useful way to use it. And then the third way that I've used it is working with either the whole school, the whole SLT, or head teacher with lots and lots of experience. And they're already on their journey. They're already doing really great stuff. And those people, if you're in the room, and that might be you today, or you might have a really great group that can work with you and support you with that, you can give an immediate best fit response. You can find the data, or you know where to find it, and you can make some judgments, and you can do things with quite a lot of confidence. And you're already aware really of the successes, but also the challenges and next steps. And you might already have some ideas of where you're going, and you might want to link it in with other initiatives that are going on in school. So in that respect, I would see this as like a guidebook or TripAdvisor. So you're already getting to your destination. Maybe you're looking forward to your holiday and you know where you want to go. And this gives you lots of great ideas for when you get there, and things to do and different ideas. So I really think it can be used if any of those situations are you, and you can move on with your journey with EAL. So if we go to the next slide. This is how I've used it. So we've done the preparation, and we've looked at where we are as a school together. I think this is the next step, is the so what happens next. And the first thing I think is so important and quite often missed in schools is what is going well. Focus on the positives, celebrate, it's just really great to acknowledge that with everything else that's going on in your busy classrooms and busy schools, all the pressures from every other aspect, the really good stuff going on in schools. So I think taking a moment to celebrate is so important. Then I would work with the school, and I'd look at where responses might need additional thought. And for me, that's perhaps not the fully developed or the partially developed aspects. I would focus with the school on what's just begun, what might be planned, or what's yet to be identified. Because I think if you need to have real movement, they're the ones that I think perhaps if you're thinking about actions for the future, they're the ones that might need a bit more nurturing as we go. And as I say, then once you've thought about where you are and you've got a good idea of where you might want to go and the journey ahead of you, also separate those out into some quick wins and much longer term actions. And so as Sheila was saying, years of buy-in from the whole school, of hearts and minds work and getting things right. It's not, it's a marathon, not a sprint. You also might want to think where all those links are with what's already going on. And there's always loads of initiatives and new ideas and things that schools get involved with. Can you tie this in? And I think that's a really, really important point as well. So it's not a standalone. It's not yet another, oh God, I've got to do this now, have I? It's much more integral to the whole school and what you're doing. So if you're happy, I'm going to share just a couple of real examples of how I've done this with the school. I don't know whether you can see this particularly well. I've got it all printed out because that's far too small on my screen for me to be able to read. But this is a real example of a school that I worked with earlier this year in Portsmouth. And they are well on their journey. They do some really good stuff, but they've got a great head teacher who's trying to move forward and tie things up and make things tighter. She's new into the school and really appreciates what's been happening now, but feels like the next steps are there. So what I did was separate it out and say, apologies, but these are the dimensions from the earlier ones. So there were fewer, but here we've got them separated out. To quick wins, things that can be influenced and started really quickly, and then lots of longer term things that are going to need embedding and really thinking about and taking a lot of time. So, for example, the first couple of things on the short term actions. Have you got a named governor for EAL? Well, the school didn't, but Ruth, the head teacher here, has just said, oh, I can do that. I can get that sorted out. We'll have someone with some oversight and we'll do some training with them and we can get them involved. And as a head teacher, that's something she could, implement quite quickly. There were in school lots of action plans for different aspects. EAL didn't have one. So again, we can make that decision now. We'll start an action plan. We'll start thinking about it. No policy. Again, these things are things that need to be worked on. And so although they're quick wins, they do still need some thought and input. But there's lots of different things in there that we can get started on now without having to sort of, wait for the whole school to come with us. So that was the first thing. And then the longer term actions here, well, they did have quite a lot of data, but they weren't tracking pupils individually. And now they're really keen on using the Bell pupil assessment framework, which again was referenced earlier. Things like they were thinking a lot about new arrivals, but they really weren't thinking about their advanced learners and how those ones that have been in the country for more than a year or two that aren't at the beginner new arrival level, how are they going to access learning? How are they going to be supported in the class? So that's another real challenge to think about and much longer term. And so what we did after that, and this is the next screen, please, Karen, is we put it together into an action plan. We grouped them by themes to start with. So where we picked up lots of different things from the different dimensions, we then grouped them together. And some of the things that we decided to look at was the first one, you can see some examples on here, was reviewing whole school procedures for EAL so that you had increased oversight, so that there was a policy that they could use data to inform and the support that was going on and linking it in with the school development plan. So that's at that level of trying to think about how they can do that. And then we put in from the areas of the quick wins and the long-term things, we started to put those in as action points. And then this obviously is a start for our conversation. They'll be fleshed out with the success criteria and timescales as we go through. Another one there that you've got is creating an improved induction and assessment processes for new arrivals. So they had someone who was there working brilliantly, working alongside families and helping them come into school, but it was a little bit hit and miss and they didn't always know who was there. Not all the same paperwork was done. Home visits were done sometimes, but not always. So it's all about tying up some of those things. And it was really good to sort of think of things holistically. Other things, so if we're going down, ensure teaching takes account of strategies for new arrivals and approaches for advanced learners. Well, that's a really long-term goal, but so important. So starting off, we're going to do some training with the staff and work with them to work out how we lots of strategies, lots of ideas. And then next year, when we do the framework where teachers go in and head teachers will go in and look at what's going on in the lessons, and that will be part of that termly programme. And teachers will know that this focus this term is going to be on EAL, and they'll have had some of those tools and some of those ideas to start with. Staff meetings and PDMs would be carrying on with that, and then when they're observed, that will be the focus. So it's important to sort of do this step by step, not be overwhelmed with the amount that's there and not be scared. I think it's just a really great structure to use. I say at the end how we are EMAS support, and that's important because I say we're a team that work with all our schools. So I've just mentioned some ways that we would do training with individuals or with school staff. We help with data scrutiny and things like that. But obviously, as Sheila was saying, you've got lots of your webinars, your guidance documents, your licensed practitioners. They're all there and available to support. So you're not on your own, and you're using this if we go back to my map, as your guide through the whole process to really improve your provision for your pupils with English as an additional language. Okay, thank you. And I think it's back to Caroline now. So
thanks so much, Karen. That was really, really fabulous. I love your map metaphor. The English teacher in me was thrilled. So there are loads of practical examples there that schools can take away. I really like that you stress the developmental nature of the process, as well as the fact that it needs to be collaborative. And as well as there being some quick wins that schools can pick up straight away, there are also longer term developments as well that would take, would be built on over a period of years. So it's definitely a developmental process. So thank you. I just want to give a quick introduction now to Kerry. Kerry James is head teacher at Christchurch, as we mentioned already. And I was lucky enough to visit his school as part of an evaluation visit with Mike Eatwell from Cabot Learning Federation. Mike is one of our licensed practitioners. I'll share the link later about where you can find the regional trainers on the website. And Kerry had contacted Mike, interested in having an evaluation of his EAL provision. And he was very much interested in looking at his cohort and the context of the school and looking at how that had changed, and really looking at whether they were, what they got in place already and how could they really work on developing the provision for those learners to be the very best that it could be. So I'll hand over to Kerry now. Thanks, Kerry.
Hi, good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Caroline. And I'm not doing the map metaphor, but I did think about the journey because, we have only just started our journey. And I thought I'd just like to share with you, what we did at the initial stages, the first steps, and some of those quick wins that I've done as a head teacher to start making those strides within our school. So just very quickly, I came from a school which only had 2 children with EAL, and I came to my new school where we got 87 pupils with EAL. So it's very quickly I had to readjust my thinking about EAL. We've got 24 different languages represented right across the global community, and we've got high levels of migration because we're very close to Hinkley Point. We've got NHS hubs around us. So when I arrived, I did a check of what we already had in place. I couldn't find a great deal. There was little bits like Flash Academy, and there were some resources from about 20 years ago when Bristol were very heavily involved in providing EAL provision. I started looking at the data as a whole school, and very soon PPG and SEND were very much recognised and supported, but EAL wasn't, as it was overlooked and wasn't supported. So from there, started doing some research about how I can start looking into provision for EAL and supporting my community and pupils. And I came across the Bell Foundation, and so I decided to get in touch with them. And I met lovely Caroline, who introduced me to the needs assessment document, which you've all had a look at. I use the old one, which has got 6 steps. It was really interesting to go through each of the steps using the questions and the RAG rating for it. And I'll be very honest, the average score for pretty much every section of 6 was 5, which if you remember the diagram, so it really opened my eyes as to support and help are going to be needed in order for us to move forward. And Caroline was very gracious to come down and spend the day with me with Mike Eatwell from the Cabot Learning Federation. And I'll give a quote which resonated with me to really get kick-started into action. Is I was asked, as we walked around the school, could you tell it was a multilingual school? And I very, very quickly said no. There was no evidence around the school. So it's from that kind of moment the journey began, really. So first steps, using the assessment needs document. I created using the Education Endowment Foundation implementation plan. I created that, and within that, I used all the Bell Foundation links to all the resources and training that I was going to put in place, and very quickly recognised that it had to be a whole school approach. It's not just from me as a head teacher downwards, or even my SLT. Every facet and area of my school had to be involved in order to make this not a bolt-on, but something that's going to be embedded for years to come. And from that, we had I wanted to just have an initial staff training session, just so we could open our eyes as to what our school is providing and what's out there. So Mike came down and did us, provided initial staff meeting training, and from that we got a really big overview, and we were able to create one of the objectives for our school development plan, which has been reviewed regularly this year. Didn't stop there. I'm a member of the Heads Executive Committee, and speaking to other leaders in my MAT, it became very clear that this kind of provision, the need for the provision, was very much welcome across the whole academy. So, so from that, we've created an executive EAL network, which I lead, and each school now has a representative from the schools. We then approached the Bell Foundation to get a whole whole day EAL coordinator training. It was the first step, which was needed to really get that big overview of what we needed to do. And Mike EAL delivered that amazingly. It really was well worth putting in place, because from that, like Karen said, we developed our new EAL policy for the MAT. We've put action plans in place for this year, including the first big rollout piece of work that I undertook was the new induction process. We were finding that due to migration, we had lots of children just arriving on our doorstep, literally being told from the local authority, right, they'll be with you tomorrow. We had no idea. And so now we've put in place a 3-day process, which is a full induction with the family. We have interviews with the family. We get them to come in, have a cup of tea or whatever, and we sit down, and we've created interview sheets, really making sure that we can get all the information we need about the family and the child, and then from there we then do pupil profiles of the child for all the staff, so everybody can read it before the child even sets foot in the school. We then give a tour to the family and the child, a meet and greet with the teacher over a 3-day period, so that on that 3rd day, when the child arrives, hopefully they feel welcome, they have a bit more knowledge, and the family have a bit more knowledge about our schools and what we're providing. So that's been the biggest piece of work in this first year of our journey. That was shared with all the stakeholders, so everybody from the trustees to the members of the board, chair of governors, every member of staff, all have been shared with that. So it's everybody's responsibility, making sure that children feel welcome in our schools. Yeah, and then from there, I then arranged for the whole of the academy EAL training. So that initial training that I had in the staff meeting was rolled out for all members of staff in our academy, just to make sure that that vision, that whole picture was across whichever school we go to. And then the other big thing that which has been really powerful this year is Mike from set up a visit to a school in Bristol, where I spent the day with the head teacher and the EAL coordinator. And now in my school we have 44% EAL children. This school has 94. So it was really powerful to go and see another school and what provision they put in place. And I came away with so many ideas, so much information and expertise. And I'm now building a link with that school so that I can, as an academy, we can work together. So that's that's kind of the initial steps for this year. And Karen said it can't be a sprint; it's got to be a marathon. So we've now started that. Then I looked at quick wins. Speaking to Caroline and Mike, there were lots of things I wanted to break that vision, that picture that I had that we weren't a multilingual school to our community. So So very simply, I put brand new signs around the school. So welcome signs in all languages, as you can see on the slide there. We've got affirmation signs that go all the way around our perimeter fence in all the languages that we represent in the school. And I even made sure that it wasn't just the English at the top. You know, we mixed it so that our languages were at the top to make sure that, you know, quality is always shown throughout, which is one of our values of a Christian school. We've got new bilingual signs around the school as well. Each class, can I show the next slide, please? Yeah, each class now has this as the child and the family come in. So it shows which languages are represented or which cultures are represented in each of the classrooms. And the children really enjoy pointing that out so that they can say which is their home language, and they practice speaking the language to their friends as well. So that was really good. We've got a whole school global community display. I think that's on the next slide, I think. Oh, is that? Can we go to the next one? Sorry. Oh, has that one been? No. Okay. So the whole of our backboard in our hall is now a global community display and shows where all the children and our EAL children come from around the world. We've shared it with parents. Parents are dripping in like things that they want to add to it, like the flag. We've had photos of traditional dress within that country or food that's prepared. So really celebrating our diversity within our school. Another quick win we've done, I've got some parents involved in this. And my Learn Mentor, we now operate a global cafe once a term where we invite all of our parents in and we've got one of our parents has got great links in Weston-super-Mare with ESOL classes, housing and other representatives. So we try and provide all that information, which sometimes parents might be reluctant to, or they don't know where to go to get that. But that's taken off. I mean, we've got the last one had 22 parents in, which so we're building gradually. Really pleased with that. We made multilingual signs for our summer fete last week. So face painting was in all languages. So as our parents came in, because we want to really, one of the things I want is the community to come in more. So that was a nice quick win. The library, I've devoted quite a big budget and we now have a multilingual section in our library where we represent all 24 languages, and there's around about 8 or 9 books for each language. And then in September is now starting to lend those out to parents. So children can read to their parents in English or their home language, and parents can read in their home language as well. So to really try and get that connection going in the library. Our website and newsletter, they all now have a translation facility. So every parent will be able to make sure they've got the correct information. That was a really important step. We've got a dedicated EAL section on the website now, and we've put in there, we've made pamphlets of what the British education provides, because there's lots of misunderstandings, especially with Eastern European, where some children don't go to school till later on. That's gone down really well because it just means that it's very clear what our school provides. We've got an EAL register now, so that the way we've done it is we've put all the children in with the representation of the language, and then when you click on the name, it takes to a link of an introduction to that language and culture for all teachers and staff. So it's just making sure that it's disseminated throughout the whole school, which is what we're trying to achieve. So those are the quick wins, and those are things that can be that have made quite a big impact already. We've had a lot of parents really come up to us and say we really appreciate that our children now are feeling more included. We appreciate that you're really celebrating our language and where we come from. To give you a funny story, I sent out a letter translated to in all languages, and the father came up to me on the gate and he said, "That was amazing, thank you so much." It was Pashto, and he said, "Unfortunately, some of the nuances in paragraphing Google Translate doesn't take into account." And so, although I got the message, he turned around and said, "Next time, can you put a copy of the English letter in as well?" So Little things like that just really make it worth the while of doing all this. But working with the EAL Foundation has allowed our school to create this EAL vision of the provision that we want to put in place. And now we know, and all my staff, and not just my school, but my academy schools, they know there's a wealth of provision out there of support and the resources and training in place to support them. I would like to now say that the school visibly shows that we are a multilingual school, and the teachers and staff who are the people that are on the front line with that provision, they're getting excited about the provision, what they can do within the classroom, where the resources are, what training we're putting in place in links with the EAL Foundation. So thank you very much for that, because without that, this journey would have been a little bit more difficult from scratch. As a head teacher, I know where I want to get to now. I've got that destination in mind. Sorry, Carol. But I want to, I know the journey that I want to take. So, next steps to finish, further training. I've already booked further training in September for teachers and TAs, making sure that my school is represented. We're going to be starting our proficiency of English assessments in September with the EAL Foundation. But the main one is our English curriculum. Going to the school in Bristol really opened up my eyes in terms of how we need to really embed oracy, which we have done in the past, but now it's time to really look at that in a more holistic way so we can provide provision for our EAL pupils. But yeah, as I said, Karen's comment about marathon, totally agree. So, but yeah, that's where we are at the end of this year.
Thanks so much, Kerry. That was absolutely fantastic, and I can see there's a comment coming already. And it was really lovely, particularly because I'd visited the school right at the beginning. So hearing how much progress you've made and what determination the whole school has shown has been a real credit to you. I love that there's a school visit going on, and that you've been to visit the school in Bristol and you've taken away ideas from them and you're networking, and that there's training involved, and that you're right, it's a long-term piece of work as well as those quick wins that you mentioned. I'm very conscious of the time, so I'm afraid we won't have time for questions, but what I will do is we've had 3 questions come in, one around early years settings, one about reading tests, and then one about contacting parents. What I'll do is I'll put some suggested answers to those in the email that will go out tomorrow. So I think that's probably the best way to do that, because we've just got a couple of slides to finish with, if that's okay. Thanks, Karen. So as we've referred to already, we recognise that some schools won't want to do this piece of evaluative work completely on their own. You can do, obviously, it's available freely on the website. You can definitely use that, but if, like Kerry, you want to get some support with that, we do have a network of licensed practitioners around the country that you would be able to contact. Or, of course, if you're lucky enough to be in the Portsmouth area, you can obviously contact Karen Thomas, and I'm sure someone in her provision will be able to support you with that. So we've got a team of over 100 practitioners. They're trained and licensed to run our training in their own area, and the majority of them are also trained to run whole school evaluations. So, as I mentioned, if you take a look at the map on the regional training page of the website, you'll be able to find the closest providers to you. You can reach out to them directly. And similarly, like Kerry, if you're interested in receiving training potentially as an action after your whole school evaluation, then they run training for closed groups, can go into schools and run training for a closed group, but also a lot of them do run training, open access training that's advertised from our website, from the regional training page. So a reminder as well, sorry Karen, if you can go forward and again, sorry. And again, thank you. So there's some of the open access courses that are advertised for next year already, that are already on the website. And there'll be more added throughout the summer. So it's worth just keeping an eye on there. And then the next slide, Sheila mentioned already that we have got an accreditation scheme. So please do take a look at the eligibility criteria. We'd really love to hear from schools that are interested in being recognised for their EAL provision. And also, just to let you know that next academic year, we will have more tools. We'll be able to launch some more tools. Around lesson observation proformas, pupil pursuit, pupil voice proforma. So other documents that will help schools with evaluating and developing their EAL provision. So keep an eye out on our newsletter and also on social media. So if you'd like to come back on camera, all of our speakers, I just want to say an enormous thank you to everybody for joining us. To everybody who's joined us in the audience on such a hot evening, but a very special thank you to our speakers, especially Karen, Thomas and Kerry James. We've very, very much appreciated your support, and we can see from the comments how useful people are finding the contributions and the ideas that you've shared. So yeah, we're absolutely incredibly grateful to everybody. And finally, the last slide, I just thought, thinking about how the schools are planning for next year, central to all of our work on developing EAL provision is the learners and ensuring that they can access whole school life and the curriculum alongside their peers. And with that in mind, I just thought I'd give a plug to the teaching resources that we've got on our website. So we commit to developing 40 teaching resources a year, and they're really, really wonderful quality. We know that schools are at this point now where they're developing schemes of work, doing lots of planning ready for next year. So if you are at that point, you might want to take a look at the website and see if there's any resources there that that would work with your curriculum. So thanks again to everybody for joining us, and especially to our speakers. We hope you've found lots of useful ideas in there. Thank you.